Hey everybody, and welcome back to Survive This Crit. This episode we'll be interviewing horror and thriller writer and filmmaker Dennis Serrano. Am I pronouncing that right, Serrano?
Oh, you got it. Yep.
Okay, perfect. Sorry, I didn't want to butcher that. Okay, Dennis is based in the DC MD&VA area. His passion for film came from the horror and thriller genre. In fact, he has a whole array of horror tattoos to prove his undying love and an amazing statue of Jason Voorhees himself. For those of you watching on YouTube, you can see that right now. Let's see, he started early in the industry, selling his first script at the age of 19. Additionally, he has been seen working on a variety of music video and commercial sets in the Northeast region. He's very passionate about animals and is a volunteer with Project Second Chance and has his own pup named Honey.
That's for you.
Yeah. So welcome,
Hey.
Dennis.
Hey,
Welcome.
thank you guys for having me. This is awesome.
Yeah, of course. I mean, after meeting you and seeing the brilliant array of horror movie tattoos that you have, and just all of our talks about film and horror movies, I knew that you had to be the first person here officially to hang out with us. So we have just some questions so we can get to know you better and audiences can get to know you as well. So first up, what is your D&D alignment? Are you neutral? Are you chaotic? Where do you fall on that scale?
I think there's a healthy balance of chaos. I think there can be structure in chaos, and that's where I would really thrive.
So tell me, what is the first horror movie you remember seeing?
It had to have been probably Killer Clowns from Outer Space. That was probably the first movie I ever seen, and then I was terrified of carnivals and circuses, and I couldn't even eat cotton candy. I was like, "There's people in that." You can't.
What did I tell you, Kylie? What did I tell you? That movie messes people up.
No, I was terrified of clowns forever.
I was, you know what, Dennis, I'm right there with you. I was never really one to be scared of clowns, but I saw that movie and I said, you know what, my phobia is killer clowns from outer space.
It's justified after that. That movie ruined me. I couldn't even go to a circus. Couldn't eat circus peanuts. Couldn't be around a circus.
Oh my gosh. Well, do you still have a clown phobia now?
No. I got too into clowns. Started listening to Insane Clown Posse, so it's a little too. I got too clowny, so I dialed back the clown now. But yeah, I think what happened was I faced my fear, became dangerously obsessed, and then I dialed it back.
All right, that's fair. So you weren't one of those ones in like 2019, that era when clowns started like running out of the woods and chasing people and trying to kill them. You weren't part of that era, right?
No. If anything, I would have chased back. I would have chased the clown back. He would have. It would have been a whole thing. I'd be like, and he'd be like, no, and I'm like, yes, come here. I want to help
Come
you.
here, clown. He would make you.
You know, that's probably better than the opposite and being so obsessed. We'd probably have a recreation of that Joker scene with Joaquin Phoenix where you're just like looking in the mirror doing a weird little dance.
Yes, absolutely.
Tell us, what is your favorite horror movie and why?
In terms of my favorite horror movie, it's definitely Friday the 13th, just because of how Jason's just a legend. Like as a fanboy,
Mm-hmm.
I can overlook how cruddy and terrible the movies really are, because they're not great. But thanks to Friday the 13th, the spin-offs that it created, it's just one of the greatest franchises to ever exist. And Friday the 13th will always have a special place in my heart.
So the whole franchise, 1 through
10, yeah.
Yeah.
When the game came out, I religiously played it. The game was completely broken. It was filled with bugs, but I'm like, it's Friday the 13th. I'm like, I can overlook all the bad.
Why is it your favorite outside of Jason just being an iconic character?
In terms of slasher films, Jason just brought everything to the table. The creative kill. We think about like the beginning of how movie magic was happening and how the special effects artists that worked on Friday the 13th, and like he brought so many scenes to life, and he did it in a way that it's eye popping. That's why like when the movie was coming out in the 80s, like people were drawn to it because of how drastically different it was from the other films that were happening. And instead of it just being a monster flick, it was a person in a hockey mask, and with no backstory. And that's why he's so like, he doesn't need a beginning. Like his beginning is he drowned in the water, but it's just little hints of that.
No, that's really interesting. So I'm coming in as like a first-time watcher of Friday the 13th. I'll fully expose myself and just say that I was a little disappointed because I thought that Jason was going to show up, and he does at the very end. But when Pamela Voorhees is like the main bad for this film. I myself, like I said, I was a little disappointed about it. But how do you view it?
So think about it like this. You viewed it after the fact of knowing that there was a Jason Voorhees. Imagine when that movie first came out and Pamela Voorhees, the big twist is that she's the killer. There was no Jason at the time. Jason was presumed dead. So if you didn't know Jason was in the movie, I think, would you have liked the movie a little, like it would have been a different experience because you wouldn't have been expecting this.
Yeah, no, I could see that. And that's what I kind of thought of too. I was like, this is probably a lot better for like people who had no idea coming into the franchise anything about it. And I kind of viewed it more as almost on the thriller side rather than on the horror side, because it's like that whole mystery of like, okay, what's going on here? Who's the person killing everybody?
The first time I saw it, it kind of reminded me almost opposite of your experience, Nick, because I was expecting Jason the whole time. Because very first time I saw it years ago, I was like, okay, I'm waiting for the big burly dude. Okay, you're filming it from that forced perspective where the cameraman's the killer. Nice. And then by the end, I was like, she's wearing a cable knit sweater. What is happening? And
I wish I had that sweater.
I personally appreciated that. I think, but it's because there's not many female monster villains, I feel like. So I guess from my perspective, I was pleasantly surprised, even though I was like, someone should have been able to take her out. She's like a 60-year-old woman. Come on.
How many 60-year-old women have you taken out, Kylie? Hmm?
Don't push me.
I'm coming for you, Grandma.
Well, you got to tell us, what is your least favorite horror trope? Because we talk about the tropes a lot on here.
My least favorite horror trope. I'm not a fan of fan films. So I think if there was a trope in terms of horror, it's when somebody makes a short out of Friday the 13th or Jason. That puts it's because there's no budget behind it. Their stories are really poorly written, and then if it does garner success, it's off the back of somebody else's creation. So
do you feel that way about like network reboots too? When people just will remake a like, for example, the only example I can literally think of right now is Gossip Girls. They did a Gossip Girl reboot, basically same story, different characters, stuff like that. So do you feel that way about all like remakes and reboots, or is it just fan made?
For the most part, it's just fan made, but I think what a director and writers have to do is go into a project knowing that they have to play fan service, but at the same time, they have to make the product their own. They have to make it so original. If you look at Anne Rice's Interview with the Vampire, the newest series, that it was so drastically different from the original, but it holds up, and it's a new story with characters that we loved all our life. They made the series better than the movies, and I think it holds up like the books. Like they really did an amazing job.
As long as they honored the series or the original character, then would you ever write a fan film if it was like honoring the original character but a completely different path with the story?
I probably wouldn't, unless I was hired specifically to write for Friday, to work on with a group of writers, and we work on a Friday the 13th film. Then I would do something like that, or like I would think about making a spec script for something I like really believed in. I'm like, oh my god, this show is so good, and I can just and then I'll work my own script into it. I could do that.
Okay, gotcha. But, so it's being a part of a universe that's already there, not taking what they've made and then doing something along the same themes but slightly different.
Exactly.
Interesting. So if you were going to try to survive against Pamela Voorhees in one situation and against Jason Voorhees, what would be your tactics in either situation?
So Jason's kind of unkillable, so I'm going to go with you can't. I guess climb a tree. I've never seen Jason climb a tree, so I'm going to go with tree climbing and just hope that he doesn't throw something at me. I think I can outrun Pamela, so I'm going to go with.
All right.
Okay. Tired up in my own
You're not going to attempt to fight either of them. You're like, I'm getting out of here one way or the other.
Yeah, I don't have it in me to kill somebody, so that's gonna be I'm I can't kill 60, even though she's trying to. I could push her, but even that just feels like abuse.
She looks completely psychotic and is saying, "Yes, I should, shouldn't I?"
She's a helpless old lady that just wants to avenge her son. I can't argue with the like that she's doing a noble deed in her mind. For, it
That's
makes sense
fair.
to her.
That's fair. It's hard to look at her as a little old lady when the whole movie you see her just slaughtering very creatively.
She's just taking out the trash. That's all.
Freeing the world of some of the unneeded.
Well,
Exactly.
speaking of taking out the trash, what was your favorite creative kill in this movie? Because you brought up creative kills earlier, and I was like, yes, we definitely have to cover that.
There's so many. You got one of my favorite scenes. I forget what Friday the 13th it is. I think it's I want to say 2 or 3.
Mm-hmm.
But he takes this guy's face, like they're in a camper, and Jason comes in and smushes his face into the camper, and the face imprints into the metal of the camper, like it folds around his face, and you can see it smushing in. That's a solid one. And then one of my favorites is Jason X. He takes this girl's face, and I guess there's a bunch of dry ice. I forget what it's called, or like liquid nitrogen. He takes her face, smushes it in the liquid nitrogen, pulls her head out, and then smashes it. And it's just like bits of chunks of her everywhere.
Oh my gosh. I feel like they got
boy.
even gorier as the films went on. Do you have a favorite of the first movie, the original?
Unfortunately, the original is my least favorite, of course. No Jason. So
But I love the artistic design for all the merch for all the Friday the 13th theme stuff. At Spirit Halloween last year, they had like a whole wall dedicated to Friday the 13th. And I was like, I get it. I get why people like this campy, bloody slasher sequence that we went through in the 80s. Like, this is cute. I could wear these like this ugly orange shirt and put some blood on me, and I'd look great for Halloween.
every year I go to Spirit, I'll buy like 3 or 4 items every year, and it's usually some kind of Jason memorabilia or some trick or treats. Like Sam's become so like Sam is like a polarizing character now, and he's everywhere. Before Sam, I don't even think there was more, like it came out 2009. So like I would say Trick or Treat has even reached the level of success or of Friday, like that, which is awesome. It's awesome seeing other characters turn into huge success. Trick or Treat came out in 2009, and it's like seeing it as popular as it is now in 2023. It's insane.
Yeah, well, I think Killer Clowns has also made that too in the last couple of years. Like it had its own shelf at Spirit Halloween too. Like you've made it as a horror movie if you have like your own section that they block off just.
Whoa, there's a whole section for this now at Spirit?
Yes, yeah. I have a lunchbox. And
oh boy, now I'm glad. I'm glad I don't shop at Spirit.
All right, so personal and silly questions, because we just like having some of those before we go into the career and industry stuff. So are you a fight, flight, or freeze when it comes to confrontation?
It depends on the type of confrontation. Depending on what it is, it's normally like, I guess fight is usually my go-to, but if I recognize I'm in the wrong, then I guess I'll backpedal. So flight, like 90% of the time I'm usually wrong. So I'm gonna go with and if I only fight because I'm just I guess too dumb not to, like just be like, no, you won. No, it's like, no, it went this far. 2 + 2 is 3. I got this.
All right.
So basically you're running up into those trees.
Yes. It's a common trait of mine.
Do you wear shoes in the house? This was a debate Nick and I had like in detail before and when we recorded last time, just because we kind of don't align. So I was curious what you do.
I really like for the shoes to be at the door. I leave like there's no reason to walk around with like, because you're just tracking dirt and crap. Everything that you walk around outside is now in your house and it's everywhere. Leave the shoes. So, yeah,
I will say, as devil's advocate, I try to, but then if I leave shoes on different floors, I'm like, well, I might as well put them on and then walk up the stairs. And we have
that's why you make a little shelf or a little cubby right near the door, Kylie.
Cubby.
And also, just as a reminder to our listeners, I also said there's only one form of acceptable shoe really in the house, and those are slippers. Slippers that are only for inside the house.
That I support it.
Yeah. I guess I'm just disgusting compared to you. That's
Glad you
fine.
finally know.
All right. So what is something that you've watched recently and that you loved? It can be a show or film, doesn't have to be horror thriller, but
Well, the most recent film that like blew my mind and changed my perspective of reality, and like it's probably, I always forget the name because it's so long.
Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Yep, it changed my like, yeah, like the way I see reality has changed because of that movie. It explores existentialism in a way that I had never thought, and it's a brilliant movie.
All right. Well, I am the only one here that hasn't watched it. So I've now been told
Kylie,
that, like, 4
Kylie,
people
Kylie,
to watch
Kylie.
it. I will.
Never have I both wanted to cry and laugh and cringe in disgust all in one movie.
All
It's gonna
right.
change your whole perspective on bagels and other things.
Okay.
So speaking of bagels, this kind of brings us to probably our most important question here, Dennis. What is your favorite meal?
Nick
My
is a chef.
favorite meal.
That's why I had to add that one.
All right. It's so I fall into usually like two options: Puerto Rican cuisine or Asian cuisine. Those are the two go-to. So I guess my favorite meal would be rice, beans, and like an adobo chicken or anything with rice and beans.
Very affordable compared to like eggs and everything else.
Yeah, I'm too poor to afford eggs now. $8 eggs.
Now rice and beans have to be your favorite. I think
Exactly.
we're all getting there. Oh, and on that note, we're going to talk about something hard, the entertainment industry. So what brought you into the entertainment industry? And give the listeners and us like a path of what it's been like so far.
So, like any other college student going to a liberal arts college and trying to get a degree, I originally went in for doing psychology, and then I gave up on that. I wanted to be maybe a coach, and then I gave up on that. And then I finally found my way into film because film is the one thing that's always made sense to me. When the world around me doesn't seem to function or make sense, film does. So fell in love with it, started writing, and it's been a slow and ongoing journey from like, I guess, 12 years now.
Wow.
And then I took a hiatus from film and focused on my dog rescue, working with dogs, going back into dog training. And I think talking to you, I had just started school, so I was getting back into the swing of things, and you kind of reinvigorated my passion for film. I think you helped. We talked because we nerded out pretty hard the last like 2 times you came out. So it helped out a lot. I guess for a while, I definitely lost a lot of passion for it, in the sense that like now, like for me, it was just a degree and I gotta just find work. But I'm back into like wanting to be a filmmaker and not just write scripts, but also be a grip, work on sets, right? But I definitely just want to help in the process of filmmaking, and I want to eventually work on a film that I'm like going to be really proud of.
So you sold your first script when you were 19, correct?
Yes, to Ghost House Productions.
Yeah, tell us what that was like. Tell us what it was like to create your own script from the writer perspective, what it was about, and what the whole experience was to sell it, which is crazy because most people dream of doing something like that and they never do.
So first thing we got to think about this wasn't even an actual script. It wasn't written in a script format. It was simply, I think I wrote it on Microsoft Word, and it was it was 120 plus pages. Wow. And I was obsessed with going to like film festivals in DC. So with whatever money I had, I would go by myself to a premiere and just sit outside and I'll just watch them. And then I'd weasel my way to a bar and get a few drinks. And that's how I ended up meeting somebody from Ghost House or whoever they were. Because I realized I never got a message. I never got an email back. I got the confirmation. I got the money, but I have yet to see the movie. So somebody just either Ghost House bought my movie and just sat on it and did nothing with it, or some weird dude at a bar gave me $5,000 for a couple hundred pages of paper.
Oh my goodness. I bet he's holding on to the script. He's just like waiting for his moment. Like, this is it.
After
the right time's going to come. Now's the time.
He's like, it was me. I would love that. If he was watching the podcast, he's like, oh, remember?
So could you like tell me a little bit what it was about? Like, I don't know if you signed NDAs or anything, but if
I'm sure I did, but it's been so long that I can tell. I could say what it's about.
Okay.
It was a brother and sister serial killers, and I remember the first opening scene I had was of the sister. She was in the graveyard, and she was she had cardboard paper, and she took chalk, and she was taking the the gravestones and like getting the words and everything from the chalk, like from the gravestones onto the paper through the chalk. It was just like a morbid hobby of hers. And
Interesting. I like that.
yeah. And I think I gave him like really cliche like names like Wednesday or like Damien or something like some dark names, just to be like, okay, this works, right? And it was just if I remember correctly, it was just like they were just serial killers. I always had this idea where like if a serial killer runs out into another serial killer because they're going after the same person. When I wrote the script, I don't think they knew that one another were serial killers. They ended up finding out because they're chasing the same target.
Oh, cool. So like
it's
a little bit of teamwork and camaraderie plus murder.
Exactly.
I love that. That's really fun. And especially if it's like brother and sister, that'd be, I really like that a lot.
That would be interesting. I actually would like to see that.
Yeah. You know what, Dennis? It's not too late. You can make a sequel or a prequel and you can make it now.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't be against it. Like I am working on a script now that I'm really excited. Like I'm rejuvenated. Like I'm resurrected. I have all new ideas. I'm really passionate, kicking ass in film. So yeah, like I got tons of scripts coming up, or at least one good script.
Oh my gosh.
Well, that's all it takes, right?
So with the script that you're working on now, can you give us a 1-sentence clue into what it's about?
Demon coconut.
All right.
I immediately know the ending of this movie.
This sounds amazing. Okay.
So you were saying that you just felt like really rejuvenated in your creative process recently. So what has it been for you in your life that you've drawn from that has helped revive that creativity in your life?
It's definitely being back in school and seeing my peers. They're killing it. There was a time where I didn't think like the future filmmakers were going to be anything special, but these current future, like they're ahead of their time. They're so good. And watching them work and watching them tell their stories, and they're brilliant filmmakers. They're brilliant future filmmakers. So they brought a lot of that back for me. Like just seeing them put all their heart into the project.
I love that. I feel like you described the proximity principle really well. That's something I always tell actors that I work with or other people in the industry who want to get started is like, you draw the most inspiration by being around people who are in the same field as you. You guys can get inspired by each other and learn from each other as you go, where it's like an open and safe creative space by just being there and being involved. Even if it means you're sweeping the floors after a shoot is done, like you're still there, you're still a part of it. So I wanted to ask you though, what drew you to writing a lot about themes of morality? Horror, I think a lot of times really toes that line of morality. So what makes it stand out for you, and how is your perspective different?
Damn, there's a lot of good questions. So in terms of like horror and morality, so death is permanent. And I think horror films explore death in a way that we just don't see in an average film. Like when we see an action film, we see bodies dropping all the time. But in a horror film, we're focused on, a specific amount of people. They're going to die in certain ways. And like in the way horror films have changed in the sense of, I call it the slow burn. The Witch, and horror films have evolved in a way that they explore morality in a way that is so much more complex than what it used to be versus yesteryear. And I'm so proud to see it change, because it's changing for the better. They're telling breathtaking stories through horror, and for anyone that thought horror was just a gimmick or a cliche, it isn't that anymore. It's something more complex. And I think real filmmakers, real horror writers, they've seen the potential of what horror can do, like the movie Raw, another brilliant film. So I want to say Swedish, but that's another film that was just like mind-blowingly good. And I think they understand how death, and because death is permanent, and I think horror films really capture that essence in a way that it's scary, like because that's what horror films are supposed to be, scary, because that if this happened to you, that's it, it's over.
That was beautiful, because I feel like you're right. Like we went through the whole slasher era and a whole bunch of other eras, and now we're in a place where we're able to talk about death is more complex and life after death, and playing that more into how these films work and just the relationships of how these people interact with death, rather than it being a ticking time bomb of like, okay, this person's going to die at minute 10. This person is going to die at minute 20, and it's just watching the kills happen.
Yeah, absolutely. What you just said.
Dennis, for all the other aspiring filmmakers out there, What advice can you give them?
If you're going to be good at something, you have to better yourself. You can't just go in and want to make a film and just film is more complex than just taking a phone and just recording something. It's or like understand the basics of cinematography and how like everything works. And if you're going to be a filmmaker, give it 110%. You're the future. Film should only be getting better, and I feel like it can be, and I think it's going to get better. But I've seen so many people try to go into the film industry and they get stuck and they give up and they think just one part, like only one aspect of film is what they're fighting for, but they should look at it as you could be a part of a film in any way, shape, or form. You just have to lower your expectations. I don't think you should go into film thinking that you're going to be the next Scorsese, Tarantino. I think you should set up realistic goals, and then especially small ones, and work your way towards the big one. So yeah, I would say give it your all, and don't half-ass being a filmmaker, because you can't half-ass being a surgeon. So
No, you cannot. No, yeah, I really like that you say that. Kylie and I were having a similar discussion a couple weeks ago about just people who are creative and the importance of just being passionate about what it is that you want to do. And I was talking with Kylie about some creative ideas of myself because I haven't been very creative most of my adult life so far. But the biggest thing I kind of like took away from our conversation with this, Kylie, was you gotta not have high expectations of like you were saying, Dennis, like being the next Scorsese, or because mine is related to cooking, like being the next, what is it, Gordon Ramsay or anything. It's just about like having something that you enjoy doing and setting aside like a little goal for yourself and then just putting it out there.
Yeah. I think the point that I kept talking to you about when we hung out a couple weekends ago when you were here was it's about being willing to, like you said, put it out there and not striving for perfection. And I think what Dennis was saying of just putting all your passion in there and just doing it is huge. But I think also as a note of encouragement to these filmmakers out there, that everyone has their own unique story and their own unique experiences. If they're willing to put the work in, there's room for everybody at the table. Even though it's a very competitive and niche industry, I think if you're willing to put in the work and willing to lean on your own stories and tell stories from your own unique perspective, you can really create something great. And as long as you're willing to let go, not strive for perfection, but being willing to put yourself out there, there's room for all of us at the table. So
I like it.
So Dennis, what are you working on now that our audiences can keep up with, or that can keep up with you?
So working on the script and doing a bunch of, so in order for a lot of graduates from Mason to graduate, they have to do a director or a producer. They have to produce 2 films. As a director, they have to direct 1 film. So right now I'm actually helping out with student projects. They did pitches, like we were in a room that everyone was pitching their stories, and I only wanted to help on sets that I felt like the stories were actually worth telling and they're compelling and interesting stories.
yeah,
And the only stories that were actually good, in my opinion, because I'm brutal when it comes to scripts and storytelling. I only want to really be a part of something that's like, if you're really trying to make a difference, and so like you're telling a story that hasn't been told before. That's what I want to hear.
okay, yeah, that's fair.
So I only did LGBT friendly scripts. They were the only stories that were truly compelling and interesting because it was about something that I am like, it's something that I'm not completely familiar with and I don't know, and I want to know it. I want to be a partner. I want to understand. And their stories were really good.
Well, where can we keep up with you, like on social media and stuff?
So yeah, I have a Facebook. I'm an old man. I like my Facebook. I post every now and then now. Like I'm starting to post more stuff on there just because I'm trying to get myself out there, trying to sell myself. And I got a little Instagram. I think everything's under like Dennis Serrano or Dennis.Serrano. Shouldn't be hard. The only white dude with a Spanish last name.
All right. Well, we'll make sure to include the link for sure. Do you have any last words about Friday the 13th before we sign off?
If you're sleeping on Friday the 13th, you shouldn't. It's one of the greatest franchises ever to exist.
It really is one of the greatest franchises. It's definitely rated in like the top 5 easily by audiences and even in the gross amount that they made. So it's definitely made a huge impact. And as we can see with Dennis right here, it's definitely revolutionized how Dennis sees the horror world in general. Hey everyone, thanks for watching this episode of Survive This Crit with Dennis. Thank you for joining us and stay tuned for more Friday the 13th RPG content.